Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about 3.2, solving equations having like terms and parentheses. So let's start off with a little bit of review first. Now the question here is asking to solve two-step equations. So let's start off with the first one. The first question is asking us to solve the equation 80 equals to 23 minus 3v. So I'm going to write down the equation first. 80 equals to 23 minus 3v. First step that I'm going to do is I'm going to see if there's any addition or subtraction that I could complete. I see that we have a positive 3 subtracting with 3v. Because it is positive, I'm going to do the opposite operation, which would be to subtract 23. And I'm just going to create this equal sign right here, or cut the equal sign, so that I know that whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to subtract 23 on both sides. When I do that, I get 80 minus 23. That equals to, 10. This changes to a 7. 10 minus 3 gives me 7. 7 minus 2 gives me 5. And these two cancel out, and I drop down the negative 3v. Now I see that negative 3 is multiplying by v. So I'm going to complete the opposite operation, which would be to divide by negative 3 on both sides. When I do that, I get my answer, negative 1, 9. And so this cancels out, and I'm left with v equaling to negative 19. Let's try out the next problem over here. It says to solve the equation d divided by 12 plus 25 equals to 29. Again, I'm going to look for any addition or subtraction that I could do first. I see here that we have d divided by 12 and it's adding by 25. Again, I'm going to subtract 25 on both sides. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. When I do this, the 25s cancel out. I drop down the d divided by 12. And then 29 minus 25 gives me positive 4. Now I see here that d is dividing by 12, so I'm going to complete the opposite operation, which would be to multiply by 12 on both sides. That cancels out the 12, and here I would be left with d equaling to 4 times 12. That equals to 48. So my answer here would be d equals to 48. Now let me clear this, and let's do a little bit of review first. So the question is asking us to solve the equation 12k plus 7 equaling to 31. I'll give you a few minutes to work on this on your own. Alright? So what we're going to do first is write down the equation we have here. We have 12k plus 7 equals to 31. So I'm going to start off by cutting my equal sign in half. And then I see here that 7 is adding by the 12k, so I'm going to cancel it by subtracting 7 on both sides. When I do that, this cancels out the positive 7. I can also drop down my 12k. And then here 12k, we have 31 minus 7. If I change this, I get 11. This turns into a 2, and I'm left with 24? Let's see, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep, 24. Then I see that 12 is multiplying by k, so I want to do the opposite operation, which is to divide by 12 on both sides. This cancels out my 12, and I'm left with k equaling to positive 2. Alright, so since we've covered a bit of review, let's start off with the new content for today. So the new content for today is 3.2, solving equations having like terms and parentheses. So let's say that it's a little bit more complicated, where we're asked to solve the equation negative 21 equaling to 7 times 3 minus x. Now, whenever we see that we have a number next to parentheses, if we ever see a number that is multiplying with parentheses and it has two terms in it, right here we have positive 3 subtracting with x, then what we can do here is we can use the distribution property. So I'll just write down that this is the distribution property. And what the distribution property is if we have a number right here, we can multiply that number with the 3 and also with the negative x. So right here, 7 times 3 equals to positive 21. So I'll write here 7 times 3 equals to positive 21. So this is a 21. And then here, 7 times negative x, that equals to negative 7x. So I'll write here negative 7x. And that equals to negative 21. Now, it's just like the previous example where we just have to solve. So I'm going to cut my equation in half again. I'm going to subtract 21 on both sides so I can cancel out that 21. When I do that, I get negative 21 minus 21. That equals to 2 and 4, negative 42. Last thing I need to do is just drop down that negative 7x. Then I see that negative 7 is multiplying with x. So the opposite operation would be to divide negative 7 on both sides. That cancels out the negative 7. And then I'm left with negative 42 divided by negative 7. That gives me positive 6. And I drop down that x. So this would be my answer. Let's try out one more. So it says to solve 5x minus 2 times x minus 1 equaling to 8. So again, I see that we do have a number where we have two terms in parentheses, and so I'm going to complete the distribution property again. When I complete the distribution property, I'm going to be multiplying negative 2 times x. That equals to negative 2x. Then I'm going to multiply here negative 2 times negative 1. And that equals to positive 2. So I get here negative 2x. And since this was a positive number, that means that I'm going to have that positive sign, positive 2, equals to 8. And I'm going to drop down that 5x right here. So before I start solving, what I want to do is combine any like terms right here. Like terms. So just a little recap, what is a like term? If you have a number such as 4a to the power of 2, and we have here 7a to the power of 2. We can call these like terms because of the fact that they do have the same variable or the same letter, and on top of that they have the same exponent. So over here, if I were to look at this problem, I see here that we have two like terms, which is positive 5x and negative 2x. So I'm going to combine those together. 5x minus 2x, that equals to 3x. Drop down the 2, and that equals to 8. Then the last part is just to solve. So I'm going to cut my equal sign, complete the opposite operation, which would be to subtract 2 on both sides. That would cancel out that 2. And then I'm left with 3x equaling to positive 5. Again, 3 times x, the opposite operation would be to divide by 3. That cancels out that 3. And then I'm left with x equaling to 5/3. All right, so let's try it out. Let me go to a problem. So let's say that we have solve the equation h divided by 9 minus 19 equals to -10. I'll give you a few seconds to answer this on your own. Okay, so let's see. Right here, let's write down the formula h over 9. Oh, actually, yeah. H over 9 minus 19 equals to -10. Right here, going to complete the opposite operation and cancel out that 19 by adding 19 since it was a -19. When I do that, I can cancel it, and then I drop down the h over 9, and that equals to +9. Afterwards, since h is divided by 9, I could do the opposite operation, which is to multiply by 9 on both sides. That cancels out the 9s, and I'm left with h equaling to 81. Let's try out another example. Here we have solve the equation 3 times 7 minus 2y equaling to 9. Again, I'll give you a few minutes to work on this on your own. Okay, so we have 3 times 7 minus 2y equaling to 9. First thing I want to do is distribute the 3 to both the 7 and to the -2y. When I do that, I get 3 times 7, that equals to 21. And then I also have here 3 times -2y, and that can be changed as 3 times -2, leave the y on the outside, and I get -6y as my answer. So I'm going to start off with a 21, and then since this was a negative, I'm going to subtract it by 6y here, equals to 9. Last thing to do is solve for y. So I'm going to cut my equation in half, cancel out this +21 by subtracting by 21 on both sides. When I do that, I can drop down the -6y. When I drop down the -6y, I get, let's see, -21 and then +9. That would be 11. This turns into a 1. I get 2, 1, and since the 21 was a bigger number, that means I still have a negative number as my answer. So after that, I have -6 times y. I want to do the opposite operation, which is divide by -6 on both sides. That cancels out my -6, and I'm left with y equaling to +2. That would be my answer.
Let's take a look at the 3 concepts that we have, and I'm going to record this for the reason that these are problems that are going to start stumbling some of you. So if you feel like these are really hard or you're really confused, don't worry, it happens all the time with these type of problems. So I'm going to rewrite the problem on the side. We have -8p minus parentheses 6p plus 9 equals -51. Okay, so as we're looking at this problem, it tells us, well, I mean, yeah, it does tell us we have to solve for p. And p is right here on the left side. But there are so many things going on, we got to figure out what we have to do. We're going to split the equation into 2 parts. You could box the variable to figure out where the variable is, but what else do we have to do? We have a parentheses there for a reason, and if we are thinking about PEMDAS, we usually have to do a parentheses first. But 6p cannot add 9, so why in the world is there a parentheses? It's because the problem wants you to distribute. And what are you distributing? You are going to add a 1 right here. The 1 is not there because technically it doesn't need to be. But if you add a 1 there, it's going to help you understand what you need to distribute. We're going to take -1 times 6p. So that gives me -6p. We're going to take -1 again times +9, and that will give me -9. Now, what about everything else? Just rewrite the problem. Bring it down. Bring down the -8p, bring down the equal sign, bring down the -51. Okay, we still gotta solve for p. And if we are going to box the variable, there are 2. If you box it, you will know that you can't have 2. You gotta combine it. And they are the same variable, so -8 minus 6, that gives you -14p. And I'm going to bring everything else down again. -9 equals -51. My variable is still here. It's still p. It's still on the left side. It never moved to the right. So there are 2 numbers. We have a -14 and we have a -9 that we have to use inverse operations on. So which one is it? You can do it, think of it different ways. Maybe one way that will help some of you is you do everything that's away from the variable first. So is -14 or -9 further away from the variable p? It's the -9. So we are going to get rid of the -9 by doing the inverse. We're going to add 9 on both sides. Rewrite the problem. We have -14p, -9 plus 9 cancels out, equals to, that is -42. Okay. We still have a number to get rid of, and now it's the last thing, the -14, because that's the last thing there is. We did everything away from it. How do we get rid of -14? You have to be very careful not to think because it's a negative, you're going to +14. Do not get into that situation because it is not +14 on both sides. You are dividing -14 on both sides. So this cancels out. We have p equals to negative and negative becomes a positive, so p equals to 3. So please write that down if you are having trouble with these, and I hope some of you were following along if you are having a lot of trouble with this. Okay, this is a really long problem. Many steps you have to do, many things you need to know. You need to know how to distribute. You need to know how to combine like terms, and you need to know the basics of solving an equation. So we have p equals to 3. Okay, I'm going to press enter, and there we have it. Okay. Let me see. I'm going to do just one more, and it's this one right here. 120 minus 6 equals to 3 parentheses -5 b minus 7. We split the equation. Okay, I'm just going to box the variable so I know that everything I have to do is on the right side, right here. Now it looks a bit better because if you get used to distributing, you know that you're going to have to distribute. -15b, 3 to -7, we have -21. And I'm going to bring everything else down. Okay? Two different options you have. You could either do this first, 120 minus 6, or you could just leave it. It depends on what you see first. You could just leave it, box the variable on the right, and figure out that you got to add 21 on both sides. That's totally okay if you want to do it this way. But now what's going to happen is on the left side, you have 120 minus 6 plus 21. That's what it shows. So you just have 3 numbers. So we punch that into a calculator, 120 minus 6 plus 21, we have 135, okay, equals to negative 15b. One last step, not add 15. We are going to divide negative 15 on both sides. So 135 divide 15. Your answer is negative 9 equals to b. Please keep the variable on the same side that it was. It'll cause less confusion. Okay, so negative 9 equals to b. Okay.